Welcome to this Muskogee Genealogical Society virtual presentation on The Wrecker, an early Columbus film. I'm Daniel Bellware. This presentation is based on a portion of my article, Movie Makers Come to Columbus, in the spring 2016 issue of Muskogeeana. Several movies were filmed in Columbus in the early days of movie making prior to 1920. Itinerant filmmakers traveled from town to town making what they called home talent photo plays. While little thought was given to these movies at the time, these films are now considered by the Library of Congress to be culturally and historically significant. Filmmaker Richard Norman came to Columbus in early 1917. Working out of his studio in Chicago, he filmed a movie called The Wrecker in at least 40 different towns across the country. Each time, he used local talent to populate the cast. Norman had acquired some footage of an actual train wreck and built a story around it. He then went from town to town filming versions of it for the amusement of the local audiences. The film was essentially a vanity project for the well-heeled citizens of Columbus. However, a portion of the proceeds were donated to the Federated Women's Clubs to help Columbus playgrounds. Some of those 40 places where the film was shot include Columbia, South Carolina, Little Rock, Arkansas, Ottawa, Illinois, and Tulsa, Oklahoma, among others. Stories circulated that the locally produced film would be a real professional production made by notable citizens and shown nationally. However, there's little reason to believe that the movie was shown anywhere but in the town where it was filmed. In Columbia, South Carolina, it was said that people who witnessed the film will little realize the care and preparation the players and producers of this film went to give them this feature, and mentioned that the governor and mayor had leading roles. In Montgomery, Alabama, locals boasted that the movie was not just an amateur theatrical picturized, but a real photo play. In Tulsa, Oklahoma, they reported that it was millionaires and the city's mayor that were starring in their production of the drama. Here in Columbus, the Ledger declared that it is seldom that such a picture gets as far away from amateurishness as does The Wrecker, and it has been shown all over the country. The movie played at the New American Theater on Broad Street for only 3 days, February 15th, 16th, and 17th. The Wrecker got top billing ahead of the other features shown in those days, even knocking star Marie Dressler down to second billing. The theater re-released the movie in December 1918 to capitalize on the wartime records of 2 of the actors, Blanchard Battle and Dana Gilcrease. They played 2 engineers in the railroad story. Gilcrease and Battle both served in World War I, and Battle wound up in a German prisoner of war camp. The film starred G. Gunby Jordan as the president of the MN&Q Railroad, with John T. Davis as the railroad superintendent. The female lead was Miss Georgia Mitchell. The rest of the cast represented many of the better-known families in Columbus. They included the mayor, John C. Cook, P.E. Whittlesey, A.J. Land, J. Albert Curvin, Elizabeth Clayson, Mrs. Carlton Battle, Mrs. Jack Bradley, Susie Blackmar, Edith Kyle, Mrs. Rhodes Brown, and A.C. Chancellor. The Columbus Inquirer published a recap of the entire story during the showing. In brief, the drama unfolded as Jim, an engineer on the railroad, played by Blanchard Battle, falls in love with Helen, played by Georgia Mitchell, daughter of the railroad superintendent. Jim and Helen go for an automobile ride and attend an exhibition. When a fire breaks out next door, one of the fire engines collides with Helen's car, trapping her. Jack, played by Gilcrease, rescues Helen. It's love at first sight. Jim is jealous of Jack, and they fight in the rail yard. Jack asks for Helen's hand in marriage, but her father refuses. The railroad company selects Jack to compete in a race to keep the government mail contract. If he wins, he'll be promoted and allowed to marry Helen. Satan tempts Jim to sabotage the race, causing a head-on collision between trains. Jim is arrested after a shootout on Broad Street. Jack survives the wreck and marries Helen, and they live happily ever after. Norman probably went next to Pensacola, Florida. A version of The Wrecker was filmed there in March of 1917. Apparently, Norman preferred the South to Chicago and later moved his operation to Florida when he took over the Eagle Studios in Jacksonville in 1920. He made one last version of The Wrecker, this time with an all-black cast called The Green-Eyed Monster. With that, Norman found a winning formula. According to his son, he was disheartened about the state of race relations at the time, both in real life and in the movies. He saw an untapped market, so he went out to help give the Black community a stronger place on film, behind the camera and in the theaters. He produced some very successful race films between 1920 and 1928. These movies included entirely Black casts made specifically for Black audiences. Two of his best-known films were The Green-Eyed Monster and The Flying Ace, a movie that still exists today and is occasionally screened. So what happened to the Columbus movie? The whereabouts of this version of The Wrecker is a mystery. The only known remnants of the film are 3 grainy photographs that appeared in the Columbus Inquirer in February of 1917. The first shows President Jordan arriving by train. The second is the lavish wedding scene at the end of the film. And the third is perhaps the best of the lot, showing Blanchard Battle and Dana Kilcrease fighting in the rail yard. It would be great to find the film someday and get a look at it in all of its glory. In 2013, a segment of PBS's The Antiques Roadshow was filmed at the old Norman Studios in Jacksonville and encouraged towns to scour their archives for copies of The Wrecker or any related material. Anyone with even the slightest interest in local history can see the value of these moving snapshots of their city and its residents from 100 years ago. We can only hope that perhaps a copy of this film made in Columbus may yet be found. Norman Studios is now a historic site whose mission is to preserve, present, and promote the history of silent movies and race films in Northeast Florida. You can find out more by visiting normanstudios.org. Thank you for joining us for this Muskogee Genealogical Society presentation.